Welcome to the Advance Your Art podcast, where we talk about the journey from artist to entrepreneur and everything in between. You've worked hard to hone your craft. Now take it to the next level with tips, techniques, strategies, and routines used by successful artists to grow their businesses and careers. Now, let's get started and have some fun with your host, Yuri Cataldo.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Advance Your Art with Yuri Cataldo. If you're interested in learning how to build a company, make money from your art, or transition to a new career, you've come to the right place. If you like this episode, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Today I'm chatting with Elizabeth C. Haynes, founder and editor-in-chief at Indigo Sunrise and author of a brand new book, Halfway There, Lessons at Midlife. Elizabeth, hello, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, good. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's my pleasure. So, Elizabeth, how do you describe yourself and what you do?
I'm a writer. I was an English major, so primarily I'm a writer. I've been a marketer for a long time. I've also been a tech writer and a teacher. I've done a lot of things, but kind of at the heart is creating words for different purposes, whether it's selling something, teaching somebody something, telling a story, all the different ways you can use words. That's what I do.
Wonderful. So let's back up a little bit before I hear about or ask you about what you're currently working on. Studying literature. So why did you want to study literature in college?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting story. I was in my junior year of college and I was completely out of just gen ed courses and I had to pick a major and I didn't know what to do. I tried microbiology because I thought I wanted to be a zoologist and it was terrible. I dropped the class like the second week. And so I took a semester where I just took a bunch of random stuff, just like art history and technical theater because I'd done some tech theater in high school. Just random stuff, dance class because I was a ballerina and all of that. And I got to the end of that and I had no idea. And so I went back in my brain and I remembered that my 11th grade English teacher asked me one day, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, oh, I'd really like to be a dancer on Broadway. And she was like, oh, that's a shame because you're a really strong writer. And so I kind of went back in my brain and I was like, okay, I remember Mrs. Roper. That was her name. She was amazing. I remember Mrs. Roper told me I was a strong writer and I started thinking about it and I was like, I'm probably going to have to work jobs I don't like after this experience in college. And so I don't want to read about business. I want to spend my time reading stories about people instead of just studying something else. And she said I was a good writer, so let's do it. So that's what I did my junior year of college. I just went for it. So, yeah.
Well, great. So tell me more then about your experience after you graduated. What did you get into with your writing and how has kind of your marketing career ebbed and flowed?
Yeah, it was hard. I graduated in 2003 and we were kind of in a bad economic place at the time. And so I got a temp IT department, which I was like, oh my God, this is horrible because I don't like computers. I don't care, whatever. And so I got this job as a project administrator making nothing. And they asked me one day, they said, hey, we know you're an English major. Could you take a stab at redoing our PeopleSoft guide, which is an HR software that people used to use a lot? I was like, okay. And so I redid the whole PeopleSoft user manual. Mm-hmm. And they liked it so much that they fired their tech writer in San Francisco and decided to give all the work to me. Of course, they didn't pay me anymore, and I was still a temp worker. And the salaries in San Francisco were 3 times what they had to pay here in Dallas. And so they were making a ton of money off of me. Right. And so I went to another company. I got stuck in tech writing for several years. And then I ended up at a startup and I kept asking for marketing work. I said, I'll still do my tech writing. I was doing help systems at that time, doing software documentation. But I was like, I really want to do marketing. I want to do something more interesting, more creative. And I just kept pestering. And they did give me some marketing work. I lost that job in 2009. Again, bad economy, but everybody can relate right now because I lost my job again. But anyway, and so I went from there, and that's kind of how it started. I actually ended up having to get a teaching job in 2010 because I just couldn't find a job during the recession. And that was something I'd always wanted to try. But when I came out of there, I kind of flexed around a bit from that point on. So I would do some corporate training stuff, which took me back to my tech writing, but then I kept doing the marketing. And so eventually in 2013, I just quit. I had been freelancing for a while, and I was doing marketing full time after that. And so that's kind of how it grew. And this latest job that I had, I was pretty much the head of content. We were short staffed for a long time, so I ended up being not only the managing editor, but also the editor in chief of all of our marketing communications. So it was kind of a long and weird road. I'm not sure that's the road I want to be on anymore. I'm not entirely positive. We're all kind of in transition, but that's how my path went. And I was writing my own stuff along the way, my own books. I have the book coming out. So I was doing that as well for the past 10, 15 years or so, about 15 years.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious then about that. Again, because a lot of people are going through something similar right now, where the economy has kind of destroyed whatever either company they worked for or industry they've worked for. And so since it happened to you twice, it's interesting. So the startup you were working for, and then the last time the last company you were working for, the startups are always a more of a risky venture, but then more established companies, you often think that they can survive some things. What was it like, let's say, at the end? So at the end of the startup, or at the end of this last job you had, how did you find out that things were ending? And how, especially with the startup, so those three things, how did you choose to move on to the teaching gig versus like going to do something else?
Yeah. I wouldn't say that was actually a choice for me. When I lost my job at the startup, I didn't know it was coming. It was just boom, one Monday morning, no more job. And so I really thought, I'll find another job in a month or two. I'll just get another tech writing job. It'll be fine. I have really good experience, and I could not find a job as a tech writer or any related fields like business analysis or project manager or anything, nothing. And so I had minored in Spanish in college because my grandma's first language was Spanish, actually, and my mother spoke Spanish, but they didn't teach me. And so I just literally could not find a job. And so I went into survival mode, and I did a crash course on my Spanish for like 6 months. I enrolled in an alternative teacher certification program, and I got a job as a 5th grade bilingual teacher, which was not what I wanted either. I wanted to teach middle school and just older kids. And that's how I ended up there. And it was really difficult. I loved it, and on one hand, and I missed parts of it, but it was really difficult. So that's that.
Okay.
That's that story. That was not so much my choice. This time around, that really wasn't my choice either. So, and honestly, this keeps happening to me, and they say life keeps giving you things until you learn what you're supposed to learn from them. And so I lost a job the same time last year. I lost my job. And so, this time when it ended, I was actually on medical leave because I have a disability. I have mast cell disease, which is a rare blood disease. And I had gotten so sick from overwork that I finally couldn't eat. I was in pain. I had to go out. My doctor pulled me out. They fired me while I was out. And then they declared bankruptcy. So that's kind of got me where I am now. And I think those events in our lives, they're really important. They're very dramatic and traumatic when you go through them, but they make you step back and go, okay, well, that ended. Why did it end? What should I do now? I have this talent. I know this show is for a lot of artists and creatives. I have this talent. Maybe I'm not using it the way that I was meant to use it. Maybe I wasn't going the right way and I'm being redirected. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And this time I'm married and my husband has not lost his job, thank goodness. And so I have a little bit of time, and I'm not forced to do anything just yet, which is a real blessing. So I have time to think, versus last time I was like, okay, I am almost out of money. I lost my home. I mean, everything in 2009, 2010. And I had to find something. So this time's a little bit different.
Yeah. So can you talk to me then about this time and kind of the process you're going through? So I know there's your book that you've written, and then there's the company that you started, but the process you're going through right now, how are you rethinking what you want to do next? Are there books that you're reading or courses you're taking, or is it a self-reflection thing? So how are you just going about that?
I think a lot of it is self-reflection, but it's also thinking back on my career and say what energizes me, what drains me, and then thinking about my long-term dreams, my personal writing dreams, and what is getting in my way and what's actually helping me with that process. I think that's kind of what I'm doing now. And I'm going, okay, I spent all of these years writing for other people and not having much left for myself. And going through this process with the book, working with the publisher, on it, working with their editors and all of that, I'm like, you know what? I'm an excellent editor. I just proved that in my last job. Maybe I need to go that way. And that way I can keep some of my writing for myself. So I'm really thinking about, okay, I've had a couple gigs come up for copywriting, and I'm a really good copywriter, but I'm like, something in my gut is like, no, just, you really want to write your own things. You want to write books and poetry and all that. And for me, when I'm having to give all that away all the time during the day, I have nothing left. And especially for me having a health condition, I have a limited amount of energy every day. I have a finite amount. And that's where I'm kind of at now. I've done a lot of, I've read the self-help books and done all of that over the years. Right now, I'm more just in a quiet place going, what is it that I really want? And where am I supposed to go with this,
Wonderful. Okay. So let's get into your book then. So What initially made you want to write a book?
This book is my 5th attempt at writing a book, so it's not, I didn't finish the others. I mean, I made a valiant effort. One was like a memoir that I was writing about my experience with my first marriage, and he went to Iraq, and I was raising his son for him, and just everything went down in flames, and I was writing about it, and I was like, oh my, that was my first attempt, and I was just like, I cannot relive this, stop. And I just stopped. I think I was like 40 or 60,000 words in, and I just stopped. And I had a couple other attempts writing fiction and other nonfiction. And then when I got sick 5 years ago, I had a couple surgeries, and I didn't know I was going to be sick after that. And I didn't know, it was going to be a struggle. And I just sat down and I started writing. I hadn't written anything in quite a while because I was so frustrated with myself. And I felt like I just had no talent. I felt like I could write business stuff. I had proven to the world that I could write business, I could write marketing, I could write training, but I couldn't write anything for me. And I just sat down one day. I was like, I'm just going to write. And I actually started writing about an experience, and it's in the book, about a concert I attended, which was like my first concert ever when I was in my mid-30s. And it was for my favorite music group, which is Boyz II Men, in middle school. And I went and saw them. And just that experience of what it did, it was my first experience with joy in my whole life, because I come from a lot of trauma and abuse and just heartache and struggle. And it was my first experience with joy. And I just started writing about it because it was so moving that my husband was like almost crying watching me, and he's not a crier.
Yeah.
And I just sat down and I just started writing this stuff, and I just wrote other things. And at some point I was like, I wonder if this could be a book, and what am I really trying to say here? And that's kind of how this one formed, where I got to this place in my life where I had been through a lot. I was approaching my middle age life. I turned 40 this year. And I just started thinking, okay, what have I learned from everything, and what do I want to share? And that's how this book came about, was just, I just sat down and I just did it. So, and it just came out. So.
Oh, great. So with I guess the actual process of it and your publisher, how did that process work? Was it something that you reached out to them and pitched your book, or did you have already a connection because of the writing you've been doing over the years?
Yeah, I started a blog about a year and a half ago when I was unemployed again. And I just said I kind of just gave up. At that point, my cat had just torn up her leg and she was on cage rest for like 9 weeks.